Hey, if your New Year's resolution is to exercise more and you have fibromyalgia, you need to watch this video first. We're going to give you some tips about how to make exercise helpful and not harmful. I'm Ginevra. She's Sharon. We both have professional and personal expertise in managing fibromyalgia. First, I wanted to say I hate New Year's resolutions. I think they suck. They don't work. I have a fabulous therapist who suggests instead selecting a word to be like a theme for the year. And my word this year is flow. But back to exercise. Whether it's your New Year's resolution or not, everybody with fibromyalgia has been told they need to exercise to help their symptoms. The challenge is implementing it when you are exhausted and everything hurts. So today we're going to talk about, from both our personal and professional experience, how we can help you to actually implement exercise in a way that can be helpful. So for me, I really struggled when I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia in medical school. I was told I needed to exercise, but I had my old pre-fibromyalgia notions of what exercise meant, and I kept trying to do that. So I kept trying to do 20 to 30 minutes of aerobic activity. I did a very slight warm up, a few stretches, and then I'd walk a little bit more slowly on the treadmill before I started trying to do 20 or 30 minutes. And almost every time I seemed to cause a fibro flare, increase my pain, or strain something, injure some new part of my body that I didn't even know was possible to injure. And so I developed a really difficult relationship with exercise. And I know a lot of my patients have told me that they have struggled with that too. And there's a lot of different ways that you need to shift your mindset about exercise and fibromyalgia. And then there's some tips and tricks that Sharon's going to help us with as far as from a health coach perspective. How do you actually go about implementing these things? So from my perspective, the one thing that I learned and the key that has made such a difference for me as far as being able to actually do exercise in a way that helps me and doesn't give me more pain is doing a really good warm up. And by that, I don't mean stretching. I don't mean walking 2 minutes slowly on the treadmill. You're starting in a warm room, laying down on a yoga mat, and you're slowly taking each of your joints through their range of motion, literally trying to soften the muscles. Because in fibromyalgia, our muscles are so tight and tense that we're really prone to injuring ourselves. So the warm up is really key. I recorded a warm up video about 10 years ago. I also go into it in my book, The Fibro Manual. But a few days ago, I was crazy enough to try to redo it 10 years later. I filmed a new warm up for fibromyalgia exercise video. Thank you. Yes. It only took me about 10 takes, but
Not bad at all based on our show here.
exactly. But I did find I've learned some new things over the past decade or so. So I was able to implement that. And my
What do you
body's a
think are
decade
the
older.
what do you think are those new things? What were the key kinda aha moments for you?
For me, it was really adding kind of movement in. I had a regimented, like first I did this and then I did this. It was a very kind of structured format before. Now I do add in things that my body feels like it needs at that moment. If, for example, I'm moving in a certain way and it feels good, I'll stay there for 10 or 20 seconds before I move into the next part of the warm up routine. So I would say I learned to freestyle it a lot more on top of sort of the structure of this warm up routine that I developed. And I actually did it with a sports medicine like guru in Boston when I was in medical school. And he's the one that really told me, like, you need to warm up. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm warming up. I do stretches. And he's like, stretches aren't a warm up. And I was like, what?
Interesting. Okay. So stretch you need more of a movement beyond the stretching.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Stretching is great, but you actually need, in order to really stretch, your muscles have to be a little bit loose, a little bit soft. Movement is really what kind of helps us do that. So, gentle warm up. The other piece is I learned to just throw the term exercise out of
Mhm.
my vocabulary because I could not separate that from my kind of pre-fibromyalgia notions of what exercise was. I was an athlete in high school. I know, Sharon, you were super athletic before you developed fibromyalgia. And I was just used to like doing like that exercise meant a certain thing. And it became clear to me that now I needed to use exercise as a medicine, as a therapy. And so it really helped me to call it something else. And I've found that's actually been really helpful for patients as well, because we all have our preconceived notions and our bad experiences about exercise with fibromyalgia. So I like to
Yeah,
change it to therapeutic movement and it takes some of the pressure off.
it totally does. That I love the therapeutic movement, and I'm sorry I was interrupting there for just a moment because what you just said made me think about how there's probably two types of people who are probably watching this, and they're people like you and I who love to exercise and had a background in some shape or form. I was by no means coordinated enough to be on teams or sports, but I enjoyed my rollerblading and biking, and I just love being physical and dancing. But then there's also people who, like, hated exercise and never
Right.
had to do it, never wanted to do it. So we recognize that we're talking to people with kind of 2 viewpoints on exercise with fibromyalgia. So for those of you like us, we have to overcome, like, what those expectations were and are. And then for people who haven't exercised before, I know that I just wanna say I know this is harder for you to embrace this idea, and certainly I love the idea that you have to rename it therapeutic movement because that's really what we're talking about. It doesn't need to be this formalized notion, what you're
Right.
saying of
Right.
exercise. It just needs to get your body moving because it helps reduce pain. And I know you've highlighted in your book and different videos some studies that show how beneficial it can be. So today's video is all about ideas for helping you do that safely, ideas for overcoming some of those, "How am I gonna do this?" Or
That's
no.
a
So
really
that
good that's a really good point. And I will say everybody has a difficult time implementing exercise. It is not like alone to fibromyalgia. People that are trying to lose weight, people that their doctor says, "Oh, you got diabetes, you gotta exercise." It is a very difficult hurdle to overcome just at baseline, and then you add on top of that if you don't have much experience with exercise and now you hurt all over and are freaking exhausted, like, it just can feel, I think, sometimes like an insurmountable challenge, and I think that's where reframing how you think about it and maybe learning some new tips and tricks can be super valuable. The one thing I always say whenever I speak to doctors about treating fibromyalgia patients, I say, "Do not tell a fibromyalgia patient to exercise. How would you feel if you're on the couch with the flu, feel terrible, everything aches and hurts, and your spouse comes home and says, 'You know what you need, honey? You don't need to run around the block. You just need
Mhm.
some exercise.'" Like, when you feel terrible, your brain is telling you, "I need to rest, not exercise." So there's this, like, kind of additional barrier or hurdle you have to overcome. I think maybe that's the piece where health coaching can be helpful. Sharon, do you have any particular strategies or tips you've shared with clients to help them figure out how to get over whatever their individual barrier towards therapeutic movement is?
Yeah, I do because this is a big topic that I address in coaching quite often because most everybody who comes to me wants to be able to move more. And it's not even some people, yes, have exercise goals. Other people just they want to be able to move and they're unable to move. Just Ginevra and I were in our early days stories, which we share in previous episodes. So you want to check those out and learn more about that. But I've gone from bedridden to rock climbing, and it is due to my therapeutic movement. Without doing all of that, I wouldn't have been able to rock climb. And no, I'm not some crazy hanging off of a cliff with gear person, but I've been able to climb areas in Sedona out west where you're on your hands and knees and butt and climbing up the rocks. And yes, I did pay for all of that. I needed ice and heat and medicine afterwards. But I went from being unable to walk from my bedroom to the kitchen without napping on the floor to being able to do that. So I'm a big believer in therapeutic movement, and some of the ideas to get people going are to start low and go slow. So what that means is if there's movements you already enjoy doing that are gentle, again, in the beginning or when you're in a huge flare, you want to be gentle about your movements. You're going to do them at a much lower rate than what you're used to. You're going to go a lot slower with it. Or if it's something new that this is all brand new for you, you've never done it before, then same is true. You're going to start low and go slow. And it's really important if you are maybe working with a physical therapist or if you're working on a program with your physician, that together the two of you talk about the start low and go slow format so that you don't injure yourself when you're exercising. Because sometimes physical therapists and doctors are not that knowledgeable about fibromyalgia. Being on the same page with them when you're working out a program that will help you move again is really important.
Super
Um,
important. The other thing I will say is when you talk about low, you also need to remember not just low intensity, but low time. Like, I have had patients say, I can't do more than a few minutes of exercise." I'm like, "Okay, start there. Literally do 2 minutes and that and do a little warm up, do 2 minutes of walking, and be incredibly proud of yourself that you, like, did that little tiny increment." And it's not our human nature, like, we're like, "Okay, I'm on the walk now, I wanna do it." But just going a little bit before you're even feeling tired or experiencing pain, stopping, and then waiting a day or 2, and then trying to go another 30 seconds or another minute before. So, like, these incremental changes can make a really big difference.
Absolutely, and that brought me to point number 1. I have 4 strategies for overcoming obstacles with exercise, and so that's 1, the starting small, and the second one is to find an enjoyable activity. Again, we're not talking about you need to do a video or you need to join a class, like, just something that you enjoy doing. Maybe it's just being able to move from one room to another. You want to be able to do that movement. You want to be able to go to your son or grandson's sporting event, figuring out how many steps that might be. Like maybe you need to go out of your home and see if you can walk just to your sidewalk. And then maybe you start adding to the next house and you just keep gradually adding what you're able to do, knowing that there may be days where you can walk all the way down the block and then the next day you can only walk to the neighbor's house, and that's fine. And you need to give yourself credit. It's not, you're not sliding backwards when you can't continue to do what you did before. The doing of the activity is the goal. So keep that in mind and reward yourself, which is number 3. Reward yourself for what you're doing. Be proud of what you're doing. And I know that's hard because you don't feel like you're doing very much, but you really are when you know that maybe prior to watching this, you haven't accomplished very much. And if in terms of your goals for movement, and if after watching this video, you start noticing, hey, I got up and I moved, or I finally, for those of you who are a little more ambitious, have more energy, you did join that exercise class, reward yourself for doing that. Just, and by reward, just thinking about, wow, that was so cool. I did that today. That's a form of reward. You can certainly go bigger. Sometimes we need bigger rewards. If I do this exercise program that I want to do, then tonight I'm going to carve out 15 minutes to read a book on my own or to watch my favorite show or have a little
Bribery
treat.
super works for me. It is even before fibro, like, when I was studying in college, I was like, "Okay, if I read this chapter, I can have 5 M&Ms." Like, "Okay." It totally works.
Totally works. The other thing is grab a buddy. A lot of times we're more successful if we combine it with being or talking to somebody we love talking to. And so it doesn't necessarily mean you have to exercise together. A common thing I like to do, I love taking my walks, and Ginevra knows, I'll call Ginevra and be like, "Hey, I'm walking. Just got an
True.
idea for the show. Thought I'd talk to you." Talk to somebody on your walk, and before you know it, you sometimes forget about the time, and you're like, "Oh shoot, I'm home already." You go on autopilot with your little walking route, and you're home, and you've done it. So those are things to consider. And people always ask, "What are good gentle exercises?" So walking's a great one. I'm a big believer in water exercise as long as it's a warm water exercise pool. And
Yeah.
then there you have 2 choices. You can just walk in the water on your own, or if you can find a class that's more of a low impact classes, because I have seen some actually pretty ambitious water exercise classes, but finding ones that maybe were developed by like the Arthritis Foundation had some good ones. They would be a little more gentle and easier to do.
One thing
The
about warm water therapy, though, is it feels so good in the pool. I have had several patients get into the pool for the first time and they're like, "Oh, this feels amazing. I'm gonna do this whole 40-minute exercise routine in the class, and then, oh my god, I can't get out of the pool because I've exhausted every muscle in my body." So, I always remind people like, "Okay, in the beginning, still, even though it feels really good, maybe do a quarter of the class," or because you just wanna stay in. I remember you, Sharon, talking about how you just, like, it was really some of the first relief you had when you were actually, like, in the warm water pool, like, you didn't wanna get out. I think that's pretty common.
It is common, and it does feel good, and then just that in itself is very therapeutic, giving your brain and body the break from being in that kind of pain. So that counts as part of your
Yes,
movement and as part of your therapy for the day is just going, because the effort to go to a water aerobics or
just
a
the effort
pool.
to put your swimsuit on and then take the wet swimsuit off, it's just so even, like, you could even start out with just figuring out how to get yourself to the gym, and then that's your exercise for the day. That's the therapeutic movement is you got yourself there, you walked to the car, you walked into the gym, you got to the locker room. Okay. Now I'm gonna reward myself
100%.
because it has to be. Because I remember you were saying, like, the walk from the parking lot to the pool was harder than the class
It
sometimes.
was harder than the class. It was a lot harder than in the cold, in the winter and stuff. That truthfully was a lot harder. And again, I wanted to just highlight that I think what I was hearing you say when you're talking about just going counts, we really mean that just going counts. So if you get there and you're like, I'm exhausted now, I can't actually do the class, that's a win for just going to the gym and getting
100%.
there. And so that counts, and reward yourself when you go home. That totally counted because of all the effort that you did to do that. And often that's a great way to build a habit. You start that small with just the buying of the swimsuit is step 1, and then putting it on one day is step 2, and you just keep building. And that's in health coaching, what I do is work on bite-size goals so that things aren't so overwhelming.
'Cause that's
Uh,
what actually works for humans. This is why New Year's resolutions totally don't work because it's hard to build a habit by just forcing yourself to do it. You have to work with your brain and kinda ease yourself into it. If sheer willpower worked, like, we'd all be super skinny. It's willpower is not enough. You have to also give yourself that kindness, that compassion, those rewards, that positive self-talk, and that can be a reward just to pat yourself on the back. Gently,
Absolutely.
gentle pat.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think that kind of covers all of the points that,
Okay.
we were going to address with the
I
strategies.
I have a couple other things I wanted to just say about exercise and therapeutic movement. The first is there have literally been, at this point, hundreds of studies now showing that exercise for fibromyalgia helps. And it doesn't matter actually which exercise they study, whether it's walking, whether it's on an elliptical, whether it's in a pool, whether it's Pilates, whether it's yoga, whether it's low intensity, high intensity, strength training across the board, like, it's very rare that in medicine, like, 100% of things, help. With the exception of, like, very aggressive strength training, every movement that they have studied shows benefit for fibromyalgia. So, we know that it helps, but there's 2 things that need to happen. 1, we need to stop studying it because we totally get it. Totally, point is made. There's, like, literally over 500 studies at this point saying exercise helps. So, totally get it. Let's, like, shift our research dollars to other things. And then we need to really focus more on the implementation and how to exercise in the right way for fibromyalgia in the real world. Like, studies are one thing, but then how do we actually like as doctors, how do we prescribe exercise in a way that's therapeutic? And I think that's the piece that doctors don't know how to do that for people with fibromyalgia. So you might have to guide them a little bit yourself. You might have to maybe say, "Hey, could I work with a physical therapist?" Just know that like what doctors understand is yes, exercise helpful. That is literally as far as they get. And so you're going to have to bring that other piece and also know probably that doctor that's lecturing you about exercise isn't doing all that much exercise themselves. Just
Good point. And I think we also wanted to draw attention that there are folks in our community who really suffer from the post exertion malaise that happens. And often that's really common with folks with chronic fatigue syndrome and even possibly just the fibromyalgia without chronic fatigue syndrome. So we recognize that you're watching this and seeing this and know that you need to work with your doctor on figuring out what the right movements are. And I don't know if you had any other thoughts on that.
I do, just really briefly, I would say those are the patients that really need to remember that it's therapeutic movement that we're talking about, not exercise. And therapeutic movement can be stretching. It can be 5 minutes of uh, deep breathing, doing a yoga pose, one yoga pose, and maybe the yoga pose is actually laying on the ground and just getting in touch with your body and feeling into your groundedness into your body for just 5 minutes. So we absolutely want to recognize that there's a huge spectrum of what people with fibromyalgia or related illnesses are dealing with. And we recognize that what we're talking about might not work for everybody, but what we're trying to do is just give you a few different ways to think about things that might be helpful going forward and know that it doesn't have to be exercise. That's why you should chuck that term out of your vocabulary.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. We hope that these tips will help you move into the new year with some ease. Join us back here next week, Fibro Family. Be sure to like and subscribe, ring the bell, and then you'll get notified. You won't miss an episode. And also, in the meantime, if you're looking for a little more support, join the Fibromyalgia Association, which is a nonprofit on Facebook.